Chapter 3. A Perilous Journey. As Errol was blindly following the lady in white to the gates of Palisade, Cerberus left his room and went downstairs. There, he found Fendale, Eberrod, and Lorien playing cards. "Where is Errol?" Cerberus asked. "He stepped outside a little while ago," Lorien answered. "Now that you mention it, I would have thought he would be back in by now. Did you see where he went, Fendale?" "I glanced out the window shortly after he went outside and saw him walking toward a beautiful maiden in a white dress," Fendel replied. "I figured he wanted to be alone with her, so I let him be." "Did you say you saw a maiden in a white dress?" Dieter asked as he approached bearing mugs of ale for the knights. "You sound concerned. Is my brother in danger?" Cerberus asked. "He most certainly is," Dieter said bluntly. "This is not the first time a young male has gone missing at this hour in these parts. I have heard the story told more than once of how a young man or elf has been lured into Palisade by a beautiful temptress, never to return." "Who is this temptress?" Cerberus asked. "No one knows," Dieter said with a shrug, "but there are few who think she is human. I have never been a big believer in ghost stories, but I do know that this is a strange and possibly dangerous place, and I do not like the idea of Errol exploring it on his own," Cerberus said. "I think we should head toward Palisade at once." Traveling with great urgency, the company soon reached the mountain gate. Errol reared his horse to a stop before the entrance to the mountain. The giant portal cut into the face of the cliff stood ominously before them. The heavy iron gates used to seal off the mountain path were thrust wide open, a sinister invitation to any who dared to travel that far. They had been that way for over 2 centuries. The horses began to act skittish as they neared the gate. Not one of the steeds would allow itself to be led into the dark tunnel. The knights were forced to dismount. Once free of their riders, the panicked horses fled from the entrance to Palisade. "That is not a good sign," Fendale remarked. "It seems the horses have more sense than us," Errol said. "Are you sure Errol really came here?" Lorien asked. "Could it not be that he simply followed that maiden to her house, and even now is engaged in a pleasant conversation over wine and a warm meal while we are on the verge of plunging into a realm of unknown horrors?" Cerberus approached the gate. Thorny vines grew wildly on either side of the entrance. The prince reached out and pulled a tattered piece of fabric out of the thorns. After a quick examination, he held the cloth up for all to see. "This is a piece of Errol's cloak," Cerberus proclaimed. "My brother is not resting in a warm house, Lorien. He has passed into the darkness before us, his only companion being, if we are to believe the locals, a being of considerable infamy. We must press forward, and we must move quickly. There is no telling what evil awaits Errol at the end of this road." Cerberus plunged into the darkness. The other knights followed the prince's lead and began their journey on the dark road to Palisade. The warriors walked in silence for what seemed an eternity. With each step they took into the ominous darkness, their nerves grew more frazzled. They had walked a great distance and were rather deep into the mountain, but the scenery around them had yet to make a significant change. There was a sense of restless anticipation among the knights. As the warriors ventured deeper into the mountain, a pale glow became visible ahead of them. The travelers cautiously approached the point of illumination. The wind seemed to grow stronger and colder as they neared the soft light. The source of the glow became obvious as they passed under a great spanning archway and into the open air of a tremendous chasm. The crevice was rather narrow, allowing no more than 10 warriors to stand shoulder to shoulder in it. The knights looked up on either side of them, only to see towering walls of rock. Directly above them was the clear night sky. The pale beams of the full moon cascaded down to the bottom of the fissure, offering the warriors a source of light other than their flickering torches. As the warriors passed quietly between the looming cliffs that bordered their path, they experienced an entirely new degree of uneasiness. Fear had already taken hold of their minds long before this point in their journey, but now they felt it at a much heightened level. Lorien spoke what was on all of their minds. "I feel as though we are being watched," the knight said as he glanced suspiciously at the dark heights above him. I have the same feeling, Fendel chimed in. It is quite possible that eyes are upon us, the Errol said. I just hope they are content to merely watch and let us go our way. The other knights emphatically agreed with the commander's words, each one dreading a confrontation with the source of the icy glance they felt upon them. It seemed their safety was like a fragile egg cradled in the trembling hands of fate. For them, fate would either be their greatest ally or yet another enemy in a most cold and unkind place. It seemed the latter was the case, as a dark shadow passed over the nervous warriors. For a brief moment, the soft glow of the night sky was obscured, leaving the travelers in a chilling shade. But just as quickly as the shadow came, it was gone, until moments later when the sequence repeated itself. This time, the strange event was accompanied by the falling of a few small rocks from the lurid heights above. The sound of the fragments hitting the ground stopped the warriors in their tracks. There is something up there, Cerberus said as he peered up into the darkness. I can feel its presence. I have the same feeling, Eberrod whispered, but I cannot see anything up there. Whatever it is using the darkness to its advantage, Errol noted. We must try to reach the end of the chasm before it decides to make a move on us. Aware of the evil presence above them, the warriors picked up their pace. But the shadowy figure pursued them, and once again a portion of the sky above them grew darker. This time, Lorien caught sight of the creature that was stalking them. I saw it, Lorien hissed. It is some sort of bat-like creature. The knights looked up at the sky above them, eager to see the creature, yet at the same time dreading the thought of seeing it. But see it they did, as the dark figure passed once again over the chasm. In the moonlight, they could see the silhouette of a winged beast directly above them. It looks like a gargoyle, Eberrod said. It could very well be one, Errol agreed. Many centuries ago, the citizens of Palisade drove the gargoyles from the southernmost peaks of the Ice Mountains. Now that Palisade has fallen idle, it appears as though the gargoyles have returned. Are they the reason why no one has ever returned from this place? Fendel asked in a somewhat shaky voice. Perhaps, Errol said as he gazed warily upwards. Suddenly, a horrifying shriek was heard from the dark heights above. The activity in the sky above the chasm was intensifying as 3, then 5 beasts could be seen circling overhead. Their shrill cries filled the hearts of the knights with a numbing sense of terror. However, rather than flee into the darkness ahead, Errol ordered the company to stand fast with weapons raised. Should we not try to make it to a sheltered area? Fendel asked. Our chances of survival are far greater if we stand here and face their attack, Errol said. If we run, we take the chance of being grabbed and hauled into the air by the winged beasts. At least here we have a fighting chance. Once they get you in the air, you have no chance. Cries of the gargoyles grew fiercer and louder. From the lurid heights above, the winged beasts swept down on their prey. Their ear-piercing battle cries filled the ears of the terror-stricken warriors. Eberrod looked up only to see the wild red eyes of the flying monster as it descended upon him. The knight quickly raised his sword to fend off the assailing beast. With a mighty swing, the monster's battle cry became a scream of agony as Eberrod's blade ripped through its chest. Similar encounters occurred as the gargoyles launched their vicious attack on the warriors. Some knights fared better than others did. Fendel was too slow to raise his sword and was knocked to the ground by the swooping creature. He reached for his sword only to find that it had fallen some distance away from him. The knight looked up and saw the dark outline of a gargoyle looming above him with its bat-like wings spread at full span. His mind swooned with fear as he recalled Errol's words. He was about to be dragged into the sky where no one could help him. As he felt the monster's cold, coarse hands grip onto his ankles, Fendel braced himself for the flight of doom. But as the gargoyle prepared to make its ascent, Fendel heard the beast let out a terrible cry. He looked up and watched as Errol pulled his sword out of the monster's back. There was no time for thank yous, as the commander quickly turned to ward off another of the incoming creatures. Several of the monsters had been killed, and still the attack continued. Realizing that the knights would not last long at this pace, Errol issued new orders. We cannot hold out here much longer. We are going to have to move forward. I only hope that shelter is not far away." Upon Errol's command, the warriors bolted into the darkness before them, leaving the mangled corpses of the slain gargoyles behind them. As the knights ran through the moonlit chasm, they feared that they would be lifted into the air by the winged monsters at any moment. With this dreadful thought on their minds, the warriors constantly looked over their shoulders to see if any of the beasts were descending upon them. Since Errol was leading the group, he had to keep his eyes forward. He felt a sense of relief as he saw an archway in the distance, indicating the end of the chasm. He knew once they entered the shelter of the mountain, they would not have to worry about being attacked from above. However, he was not quick to leap with joy, for he did not know what other dangers might await them beyond the archway. Errol's worries suddenly became more immediate as a throng of the winged beasts swept down before him, barring his path. Several more gargoyles closed in from behind, sealing off any possible escape. The knights looked up, only to see still more of the monsters bearing down on them. A sick feeling of hopelessness came over the warriors as the horrible cries of the bloodthirsty beasts filled their ears. The piercing screams of the swarming legions of gargoyles were suddenly drowned out by the deep, thundering tone of a battle horn. Much to the amazement and relief of the warriors, the bellowing sound sent the winged beasts reeling in fear. The terror-stricken monsters flew off into the dark heights above, leaving the knights untouched. Errol peered into the darkness before him to see the source of the noise that had saved them from an almost certain doom. Beneath the stone archway, he saw a figure in a white cloak. The commander did not let his guard down as the pale-clad figure approached him. The mysterious stranger had done them a great service by warding off the gargoyles, but Errol knew all too well that the enemy of thy enemy is not always thy friend.